Hey folks, this is artist-writer Bill Sienkiewicz wishing you all a very happy new year. You're listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast.
Hello everybody, my name is Ian Taylor and welcome to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, brought to you by the Marvel Cards Fan Collective, an awesome community of card collectors and creators. You can find our two groups on Facebook, details of which are at the end of this podcast, so come check us out. With me as always is my co-pilot in all things Marvel cards. He's stuck on this planet after his crew flew off and left him in the forest, so he snuck into my backyard to eat Skittles. Surfer phone home. It's Norrin Rash.
That's great. It's not only to eat Skittles, though. Sometimes I just hang out and look through your window and just
that's
wait.
Disturbing. That's disturbing.
What? Who said that? That's weird. Stop being weird, Ian. That's very, very weird.
It's not.
Man, I do love Skittles, though.
Good.
Skittles are good.
Good.
Why am I talking about Skittles? Can we move on? Stop. You got me all hungry.
We can move on. No, the reason I mentioned that is because I sat down and watched E.T., not for the first time for me, but with my 5-year-old girl for the first time on Sunday. And she was just like... and then she was like, what's he doing now? Are they going in there? And then she's in the commentary phase of watching films and asking questions all the way through.
I've never left it, so yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that about you. Anyway, moving on to far more earthly. I say earthly pleasures because a veritable god walks among us, and this won't be the first time or the last time I blow smoke up your ass on this episode, sir. Welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Now I'm gonna have a go at saying this. Please don't tell me off. Bill Sienkiewicz.
Perfect. Wow. Awesome. Awesome.
Oh, right, there we go. That was a bit of research has paid off. Tick. Lovely stuff. How are you, sir?
Very well. And you gentlemen, how are you?
Oh, top of the morning. Well, it's 8:00 in the evening here. It's just gone noon for you. Norrin is somewhere East Coast, so who knows what time it is there.
Yeah. So I'm 3:00 over here, but oh my gosh, it is so exciting to have you here, sir.
It's fantastic to be here. Thanks so much. So,
just going to geek out for 2 seconds.
Skittles and now I'm thinking. What was it? It wasn't in the film. Weren't they going to be M&Ms? But didn't the M&Ms say no, thank you, and then go Reese's Pieces, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it was Skittles at all. Actually, I think it was. I couldn't quite see what brand it was. It was a brand that we don't really have in the UK. I know that much.
Right. I think it was Reese's. And I think now they try to negotiate those kinds of deals. I mean, I think M&M, Mars, they're probably kicking themselves,
Oh yeah, just a little.
Well, there's this really great movie called I just saw New Mutants, so we'll talk about that because that was sick. But it's called Knives Out. I don't know if you got to see it. It's really fantastic film.
I really
so good. And I teach it to my class, the screenwriting class I teach, and we were looking at it, and there was this really great segment the director did. Ryan Jenkins. What was his name?
Johnson.
I forget.
Ryan Johnson.
For The Last Jedi, was it?
Yeah.
That's it.
Johnson.
Great director, really great director. And he was talking about and gave a little bit of a tidbit that only good guys can use iPhones. And I had no idea that was one of those contract things, like the M&Ms or, the Reese's Peanut Cuts. Apparently, Apple won't let any character who's a bad character touch an iPhone in a movie, which is pretty crazy. I had no idea, but it's just a fun little tidbit that he threw out there. And I was like, oh, that's so fascinating to understand that.
It's to hear that's on the corporate level, sort of this indoctrinated or indoctrinaire kind of a thing. I mean, I was watching a little bit of a documentary on the making of Apocalypse Now, and I guess they'd actually first approached Steve McQueen, and McQueen wanted to play the role of Willard. I know that Keitel was actually cast, and then they got rid of Keitel because he was a little proactive, whereas Martin Sheen was more of an observer, an everyman, who could be affected by things. But McQueen in keeping with what you just said, McQueen wanted to be like this guy with like snappy retorts and completely not in the weeds at all. He was like hip to everything, and I think he also wanted more money than Coppola was getting. I think he wanted like
wow.
But I think it was one of those things that he didn't do it because I think at that time he was suffering from the cancer that eventually took his life. But to the end, it's like he was totally McQueen. So, but it's
totally McQueen.
Keeping with what you were just saying in terms of people have a type. It's sort of like Warren Beatty as trying to be like Dick Tracy and having his good side. There's always these desires not to show fallibility.
Yes, I love that so much. And Dick Tracy's so good and still holds up. Like the color theory of that movie is just a beautiful piece. I digress.
When you a film and E.T. wasn't. E.T. didn't that come out the same year as The Thing? Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. 82.
Did it really?
Yeah. I think I think you've got aliens. You've got two different sets of aliens. And it's like, and one is, that movie. Spielberg's film really just sort of like blew the doors off everything. But the idea that this horror film, space science fiction horror film, comes out, and he got roundly panned at the time.
That's insane.
Films that I just adore.
The Thing is amazing. Kurt Russell, it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched it with the commentary between Kurt Russell and John Carter? The commentary track is absolutely hilarious. It's so entertaining to listen to. It's definitely worth a watch. Really is.
That's awesome. I got to check that out.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was having a look through the long list of books that you've worked on over the years, Bill, I saw the Dune adaptation in there, which was a free issue, because Marvel used to do those brilliant early 80s. They did one for Blade Runner. They did one for Krull, which is one of my favorite.
Oh, yes, I remember. I remember the cover more than the interiors on that. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But, that bizarre weapon. I think it was a Bob Larkin cover, if I'm not mistaken. But
yes. Yes, but the Dune adaptation, I was looking at that, and it just occurred to me to ask you if you've seen the trailer for the new Denis Villeneuve version that's coming out, because I for one would love to see your take on the visual style that he's bringing to it.
Yeah, no, I was at Legendary when they were actually, this was a year, well, when people were still actually getting together, prior.
Yeah.
And they showed me the mood boards that Denis had set up, because they asked if I would possibly work on a sort of an associated graphic novel with Dune. That I think what I think Legendary also has their comic and publishing branch as well. So, but I've been a fan of Dune since forever, and then of course working on the David Lynch version. Lynch is another one of my cinematic and artistic heroes, and Villeneuve is. I've loved every film, even from Enemy to Sicario. It's like Arrival. I don't think he can do anything wrong. Prisoners, one of my, just a brilliant film.
They are so good.
What I've seen so far from Dune is his version is, in a way, I think it's sort of what he did with Blade Runner 2049. He's taken something that we all sort of know in a kind of a core, ineffable way, and he seems to be able to translate that. The one thing that he does that I do feel is a plus is that even when he did 2049, with Kay, I thought that his his adherence and the way he can actually get into the characters, and make it about people as opposed to just simply about spectacle. I mean, that was an odd thing when I did the 1984 adaptation. I mean, I did it going in knowing that film adaptations and comics are kind of a thankless task. In a way, it's like doing an adaptation of the Superman film and having to draw the wires that hold him up. It's like, it's a question that nobody really asks. It's like the Joker can't be the Joker. The Joker has to be Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
For me, it was like I wanted it to look like Kenneth McMillan, but I also wanted it to feel and do the things that comics can do.
Yeah.
As a language, but getting back to what I was just saying, and then I'll shut up.
Never.
The spectacle aspect is that I remember when I think the Dune 1984, like they had like a Vladimir Harkonnen doll, and a sandworm toys, it was 3 pieces of plastic. You could twist it and, and it's talk about an answer to a question that nobody asked. But I think everybody at that point was saying, there's got to be a toy tie-in like with Lucas and that kind of, angle. And it didn't happen.
No. Well,
Dune is so Dune is funny because Dune is spectacle in a different way, right? Like you have spectacle now where you have big Marvel films, bigger films, and they do these bigger moments with powers and, fights and all this kind of really great, exciting stuff that you see in blockbuster films. And Dune had all that, but it was so strange and different and so done in such a crafty kind of way. My wife and I actually just rewatched Dune because I had seen parts of it on Laserdisc with my dad back in the day, and my wife had never seen it. And we're rewatching. And I was like, I mean, one, Sting's body is just like crazy. I mean, that is fit.
It was great shape, at the time, yeah.
That guy can wear the shit out of a Speedo.
Or those wing blue things, whatever he was wearing,
Yes. But the effects in that movie and like the pacing was so different for like an epic film. I mean, that's all Lynch and that's the writers. Just a fantastic way of controlling that kind of tension.
He did one thing, which was to really make it feel like it was an alien universe.
Yeah.
It didn't feel familiar at all. I mean, from the set design to just sort of these Lynchian kind of touches. I mean, it seemed like he really treated the Harkonnens sort of as the Three Stooges. I mean, it just seems like he had more. That was where he was the closest to his wheelhouse, in terms of his bizarre sort of Lynchian thing. I with the heart plugs and the pop.
Yes, yeah.
And the cat and the rat being sort of taped together, and it's just like
the cat thing that was so bizarre and perfect. I loved it. So weird.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that the juxtapositions. I mean, not that I'm into, I'm not in any way condoning the animal, weirdness.
Yeah, you should see the level of taxidermy that Bill has behind him right now. I mean, it's superb, but strange, Bill. Very, very strange.
It's grotesque. It's like we've dialed into the human centipede.
There's actually a really good documentary on taxidermy. I forgot what it's called now, but it was actually really phenomenal. But yeah, I do love all the strange imagery. Yeah, I don't know. It's actually really good. I forgot the name of it like an idiot. I don't know why I mentioned it, but there you go.
Get stuffed. Anyway.
Get stuffed. So good.
Bill, I'm really looking forward to see his version. I don't know, with everything being what it is right now, I just heard that Wonder Woman's being available. It's going to be available on streaming on Christmas Day.
Yes.
I don't know if this is going to completely force everybody to recalibrate the cinematic experience, like, or if if it's going to be video on demand for people, and then if you want to go see it in the theaters. I mean, they did that with the Mutants. I mean, I know we're going to talk about the Mutants film, but they actually had it in theaters for a while. And I think everybody was hoping that Tenet was going to be the film that saved, the theaters, but it's it hasn't. I'm not saying that there's not going to be some kind of golden or silver lining to all of this, but in terms of that, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, when it come out, because I do think it's going to be at least 2 films, as opposed to that sci-fi adaptation that was done of Dune, which was, I think, a multi-part. But to me, I mean, I watched that and I sort of felt like it was Arrakis 90210. It felt, all the characters felt very free, Yeah. Sort of, there was, central casting kind of feel, but I love that. It's it really felt like that for me. But anyway, I'm going all over. So
this is how the show is.
We segue like mad. I mean, we
No, I think for me it's partly due to the fact that I'm usually behind the computer or behind the drawing board or packing to move, which seems to be taking longer than
I thought you'd moved by now.
Oh no, I've got about 75 to 80% of my stuff there. I just have a lot of big things. Like I've got a huge printer, a copying machine, like my whole computer setup, and a lot of big furniture that it hasn't been. I gotta get some guys to come in, but it's been totally nuts. I mean, maybe over the holidays,
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with it.
Very much.
No, the reason I knew about you moving, of course, because you posted about 3 weeks ago now, I think, moving, found this, and you'd found an uncut Marvel Universe 94, I want to say, trading card sheet, and you were like, "Who wants it?" And I can genuinely say I don't think I've ever seen one of those actually being sold. Or
those from different sets, and I guess that was one of the perks or the aspects of having worked on the set, was getting the whole uncut sheet like that. And a number of people have written about it, and I know that the rest are actually at the house. But when I came across it, because I was just going to box it up and ship it out to the house, but I thought, it's going to probably end up in a flat file, and I just thought, maybe somebody else who really is, loves them, the card sets, it might be better to give it to somebody who wants to have a home, But,
well,
so nice.
Thank you for doing that. I mean,
seriously, it's awesome.
There are a lot of us out here, as evidenced by the fact that we have this podcast.
It's really great. I mean, I actually, I was a big card collector when I was a kid. I was a baseball card collector, but I remember having the Marvel trading card set, the original one where it was the puzzle on the back. Did you remember that one?
Oh yeah.
All the I think there was Kirby and Ditko with the Spider-Man and everything else. And then I remember the Batman. I don't know who did the art on him, if it was Earl Norem or somebody, but there was a whole Batman set. But you buy it and it would have that cardboard gum, that was like just, it was like eating a sheet of drywall,
Had all the white powder on it and everything.
Yeah, it was. But the fact that there are so many people out there who really do love cards and the card sets, it's that was one of those things that I kind of was into for a very long period of time, and then shifted over to comics, to collecting comics. But yeah, no, it's really cool. It's very cool.
and then, not to paraphrase your career, shifted to creating comics, and then to creating cards as well. So you've kind of done the whole full circle of it.
When they first approached about doing the cards, that was just like it was so much fun, and I've always enjoyed doing them because, I mean, you know, the superhero cards were one thing for Marvel, because some of them would be pen and ink, and other ones they allowed me to try out different painting techniques. And the one thing I really loved about doing, especially like for the main, you know, two companies, for Marvel and DC, was that there was brilliant characters that I loved, that I was sure I was never going to really get a chance to do a story about in any kind of series. So it was a way to visit, you know, time. Like I think there was a trading card I did of the Vulture, you know,
yep.
And I just remember, wow, it's like in what, no pun intended, what universe would I get a chance to do this character if I were not, you know, doing it this way, because I'm not working on the Spider-Man line. So
and that Vulture is great.
Dip out. You know?
No, and that Vulture is great. That's from the 1993 Marvel Masterpieces, and we were looking at it, and the composition of that piece is just so. I mean, it's so you, but it's also so brilliant for the Vulture. Like the Vulture feels flat and like hard edges, and he's like on this one side of the card, and then you have these vultures in the background, this blue sky, and it's such a smart piece for the Vulture, right? It's just kind of like hard lines. It seems flat, but then you have all the dynamics and like his character.
Well, he was, you know, I mean, I liken him not so much to the Michael Keaton version, you know, where everything is automated and mechanized. I mean, I loved, you know, Ditko's version where it was just sort of creepy. You know, same thing with the Raimi version of the Goblin. I mean, here you need an actor with probably arguably one of the most expressive faces in cinema, and you put him in a Noah mask. You know, it just didn't make any sense to me.
No, it's a crime. It's a crime because his face is just. I mean, William Dafoe, right? That's right? Yeah. Just. When he did that smile, and he has that creepy smile, and it feels like it just goes from ear to ear. So perfect.
Like he's going to eventually, it's like if he keeps going, he's going to turn into a Canadian from South Park. It's just going to, you know.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys.
Oh, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
Oh, goodness me. It really made me smile from ear to ear just remembering Terrence and Phillip.
Terrence and Phillip, that's it. That was going to bug me all day. I was like, oh, what's their names?
Yeah, well, it's I think everybody has been in a state of siege and lockdown, you know, no pun, and not like, if not literal, at least psychological. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, I remember when, you know, not to get too much of a you know, a snag or a turn into darker territory, but when in 2016 when we had a new resident, you know, that it just was pretty devastating. I remember just feeling kind of like I'd gotten some horrible, like the country gotten some horrible diagnosis, you know, and so I think that has been in the mind of, I think, of so many people for the last 4 years, you know, waking up and reading the news like this, you know, what's happening. So so the idea of actually laughing about something, you know, where it's not a rueful kind of laugh, you know, or adding to it and saying, you know, if it weren't so awful, it would be funny. Well, it's funny, and but hopefully we'll get through it. But
hopefully it's done very, very soon. Hopefully it is done very, very soon.
Any of your your listeners or viewers, but you know.
I mean, listen, we had the same in the UK with Brexit. Mm-hmm. Which has been enormously upsetting, and has caused so much division and excuses for it. Kind of gives intolerance an excuse and a voice and a reason within society, which has been ghastly to see.
What they did with Corbyn, in terms of the elections there, but also, your version with Brexit is sort of like a version of the wall or isolationism that we're going through here. So, it's a crazy time generally,
Yeah.
But
well, it's really nice. It's really nice because in the group, we have people who are from everywhere. And it's been so nice to talk about cards, and we've had an influx, and the show's been so great because it's just been this nice moment of levity and kind of like just enjoying art. You know what I mean? Just looking at pieces and enjoying
the hobby.
Kind of
Let's. I will refrain from veering into that territory.
Oh, please, you're fine.
No.
It was really pretty much like, what you said about laughing about Terrence and Phillip or whatever.
Yeah.
You realize that I certainly realized that a lot of my laughs were sort of they came with a price tag. It felt like they were in lieu of something horrible. But it's nice to actually just let go a guffaw.
Oh, it is. It is.
It's very different. It's very different now.
One thing that has been apparent this year, from our perspective, as Norrin mentioned, we've had an influx of members into both of the groups. There's one focused on Marvel Masterpieces collectors that you were in for about 21 minutes at one point, Bill, because Dave DeVries invited you in. and I accepted it, and I think you must have looked at your phone and thought, I'm not having that. But you are an honorary member of the group to this day, sir. You have a membership number and everything. But this year we've had it's happened across the entire, sports cards are going absolutely crazy. Okay. And Pokemon, there's record prices on things. The new Marvel Masterpieces set, which was Dave Palumbo, Julie Bell's son and very, very talented artist, has just released his Marvel Masterpieces 2020 set, which was the 11th set, I believe, in the lineage. And wow. It was absolutely pounced upon. So the interesting thing about 2020 is that everyone's just focusing on what they love, be it hobbies or be it keeping fit or mindfulness or creativity, whatever they can do just to tune out and just to focus and not go absolutely mad.
Yeah.
Which is why it occurs to me that you finding that uncut sheet kind of a fair way into 2020 and putting it out there, it's a golden moment to have floated that balloon. I mean, I'm sure it would have gone anyway, but it just struck me.
Yeah, well, interesting when you mentioned the card sets, because I know that I think Jusko, didn't he do an entire? I think he did a whole Tarzan set. I mean, that would be fun to do. Most of the sets that I've done solo have been, I've dipped in and done any number of Marvel or DC cards, but not the whole set, which would be a blast. I'd love to do something.
Well, listen, we had the president of Upper Deck on a couple of months ago, as well as some of his team. So I'm sure you've got their number because you've done. Haven't you signed at their booth at San Diego Comic-Con at the Upper Deck booth?
Yeah. Wasn't there a print or something? There was something going on.
I probably have.
Remember.
I think I've signed some stuff at the booth for them, but I know that again, the idea of actually doing a whole set, would be ideal.
It's a commitment.
That'd be awesome. Sure. That'd be sick. I'd be at the front of the line for that one. That'd be fantastic.
I think a lot of people would.
I think, a lot of people would, yeah.
And, friendly dictators or, Kennedy assassination cards or something like that, right. Or more political type things. So it's which allowed me to jump around. But, and those are a commitment as well. But
I'm sure that's a pretty big list. What is that, like 90 cards in a set or 100 cards in a set? That has to be.
One is like what you mean for the superhero ones?
Yeah, I mean,
no, the JFK one
you did by yourself.
One was 36, I think.
36.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
But and I remember I had a show in Pittsburgh where actually I had that a lot of the artwork up for that for sale.
Oh wow!
And, the exhibit was about to open on opening night, at cocktail party kind of a thing, and I went to the owner of the gallery, and I said, I don't want to sell any of the cards unless it's complete set. And she said, well, I put a whole bunch of, and I said, look, and I paid for all her expenses. I said, let's, if we sell some other stuff, because what I was afraid was going to happen, and it kind of would have turned out to be this, everybody would have wanted the Marilyn Monroe trading card. And then all the other ones would have just sort of become also rans. And without that one card. So eventually, I mean, I did end up selling the entire card as a set, as a single set. But that's, I suppose, the one odd thing about, sets with a theme, whereas as opposed to, like trading cards, like with superhero stuff, it's, you can find people who are, there's going to be somebody out there who's into a specific character.
Oh yeah, we have a collectors club. We are, right? Like I go under the alias of Norrin Rad, which is, the surfer guy, because I teach at a university, so I don't want my students knowing how dorky I am, and you know what I mean. And then Ian, my buddy Ian here, he's a big Black Cat collector, so he does Black Cat, and I do surfer. So we have like a collectors club, and there's tons of us out there trying to get our characters and all these different cards and stuff like that. So, right. But yeah, no, for sure, with a superhero card or supervillains, even the most obscure character, the crazy thing about card collectors is that we all really have a lot of respect for the art. As you know what I mean? Like when you do comic books, you're into story, you're into art, you have multiple things, sequential art, the paneling, the penciling, the inking, you know what I mean? There's a lot of different avenues to take. With card collectors for superheroes, it really is looking at the art, looking at the composition, looking at the style, looking at the creative choices. But yeah, so for us, it would be kind of like you could have a Hulk, or you can have like a Prowler or something off character, you know what I mean? Or Moonstar or Mirage, you know what I mean? You could have one of those and someone's like, yeah, I'll take it. You know what I mean? That's mine.
Yeah. Well, that's also the fun, because you're trying to distill the essence of a character down to one image. And that's always a challenge. It's a wonderful challenge as well. When I mentioned the Black Cat, I think the first time I ever saw that character, I think it was when Neil ended up doing, I think, something with him with the Spectre. I think wasn't the Black Cat she with the Spectre that drawn by Neil Adams, but the Wildcat. Or Black Cat. I'm sorry. Which character are we talking about?
The Black Cat, the Marvel one, Spider-Man's.
The female. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the one you're thinking of. Yeah.
Sorry,
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. But no, that's great. Yeah. You get certain artists. I mean, who can really capture the feel for the characters. So.
Well, I think you did it very well. Like, so let's do some card questions, because I know listeners are dying to hear card questions. So your first time doing superheroes or doing Marvel cards, was that 1993 Marvel Masterpieces? I know you did sketchographs, like, some sketches and stuff, but like doing it for a card set. Right. I think the first was 93. Was that right? Or did you do some other before that? That was like Marvel, pertaining to Marvel.
So when I don't really recall what, it sounds about right. 93 sounds about right. I think there was a period when, like with any associated art form. Like with comics, it's like there was a period when I think Pogs were kind of a big thing.
Yes.
Know? And it's like they sort of run their course, and then trading cards sort of like were in their ascendancy. So they and then everybody, seemed to jump on the trading card bandwagon. So I think that sounds about right, 93.
Yeah, because that would be right after the Joe Jusko set. So like you said before, so it was like the big Surgeons was 92 Joe Jusko set, where he did the whole set, over 100 cards.
Marvel masterpieces. Yeah.
First Marvel masterpieces. And then the second Marvel masterpiece was a collage of many different artists to work on the set. I think it was like a total of 6 or 5, maybe around there.
So you had Joe Jusko, you had Ray Largo. There was
Bill Sienkiewicz.
There was Steranko was on it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Joe Phillips.
Yep. I think you've got 4 cards in that one, Bill. I've got Vulture, Hulk, Wolverine, and Ghost Rider that I've written down here.
Sabretooth too.
Sabretooth, of course, yes.
And then there was a set that came out later where I think I did like Professor X and
Fleer Ultra X-Men, I think.
Fleer Ultra X-Men.
You did a Cable as well, I think.
It's like I think I did Danielle Moonstar. Raimi Sinclair as Wolfsbane.
I've got them all here. There's a prize if you get them all. There's a car for you if you get them.
Yeah. Well, it's in the sets. I just remember the images and just like I almost remember painting the images. And there was one I did of a member of the Brood with the
yes.
Which I remember doing as well, because they were really fun to do because I got a chance to sort of, I could do an attractive female and I can do a big bug monster.
You did Mojo. You did Mojo. I swear that's put kids. Yeah, that's put kids in therapy. We actually did it. We did a Halloween episode last year, and it was one of the cards we featured in that.
It made the list, baby.
Randy sort of like talk about going to South Park on that. That was great.
Well, it's funny because actually the first time I was introduced to your work was from the 93 Marvel set. Funny enough, like I looked at Hulk and then I saw your Ghost Rider there and your Wolverine, and I was just like, what is, because I'm a huge component, show knows this and poor Ian has to hear about it all the time, but you're one of my favorites. I'm huge into creepy collage art, the stylistic, the sketchy kind of lines. I love all that stuff. Just blows me away. I always want to see a surfer in your style. Like I'm always dying to, but
that's another one of my favorite characters of all time. When I actually read the series, I mean, when Surfer had his own series, I think with John, and I think by Dan Atkins, I think except his brother Sal linked 1 or 2 issues of that, but that was just brilliant stuff. So that's a great character, especially after all those reflections and nailing it.
Well, it's so funny to see Trad Moore's work on Silver Surfer Black, and his is just very heavy ink, very prominent lines, and very elongated type of limbs, and really interesting eyes. So it's just very funny. I think about your work. I think about structural, skeleton structure, all that kind of really cool stuff. But it was the first time I was introduced to your work was through the cards, and then of course I read Elektra, and read of course your pieces and all that kind of stuff. But and seen your art in other comic books and so forth. But that was the first time I had seen your work. So when you worked on the card series, what was the process for that? Because they're kind of like mini covers, like you mentioned before. So was a particular size? Was was it very creative in terms of like different materials? Just a little bit, if you remember.
It was, I remember. I mean, one of the nice things about him is that, because of the actual print size, I could work some of the trading cards. I could work much larger. I could work 2x up, 3x up on some of the Krypton images for DC. There was one I did. I think it was a cyborg Superman in space. I think he was sort of And I think the original to that was, I mean, it was probably like 16 times up, you know.
Wow.
The image of Candor was like, I think it was a 20 by 30 inch painting that was shrunk down. So you know, it was bound. It was. I love it when things tighten up and come together, and you know, and so scratchy lines can sort of congeal into this nice, impressionistic thing. Of course, and then working the opposite way, which is, you know, if it's something is a print size of comic book size, and you draw it at the size of a trading card and then blow it up, it starts to fall apart, and that can be something that's really cool. But I think most of the trading cards were done either 5x7 or 8x10 in that vicinity, somewhere, you know, not too far afield from that. But what was fun about them was that, you know, I could play with whatever techniques I wanted. And also because they, you know, compared to other comic work, you know, working this size would be considered working small. But for the trading cards, it's actually working large. Yeah. You know, and so covering a real estate, you know, of the surface, and then if I mess it up, I could just begin it over, you know, start it over. So
wow,
it's not like I've got an investment of 3 yards, 4 yards of canvas that I need to get out a roller, you know.
Right, start painting the thing.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. They gave me a lot of leeway, and I did do quite a few sketches of some of the characters. Other ones I just said, you know, this is kind of what I'm going to do, and but they did want to see sketches for pretty much all of them, at least in idea.
I was going to ask about that. I was going to ask if you had to do prelims for like approvals, and then you go into the card art itself. I was going to ask about that. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah,
they were they didn't have to be super tight, but they you know, it's not like quite the same as, you know, doing the thumbnails, because you know, for a comic story, because for narrative arc, because those are usually done just to sort of give you know, the writer and the editor an idea of what, you know, what's going on. Whereas with
movement,
it's like blocking, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But those sketches were. You know, I think at the time, I don't know if memory serves, I think Marvel was Upper Deck, and I think Marvel and Upper Deck were sort of this unit as well, wasn't it? Was it Marvel?
Yeah, there was something with Skybox and so forth where they had to like.
Yeah, it was Skybox. So, Impel and then Skybox, and then they became Fleer.
It seemed like I was doing. You know, it wasn't like I'm doing something for client X. It felt like it started to become part and parcel of doing things for comics that way, you know, where cover sketches and things like that. So it all started to feel that approval was needed for everything, you know, or at least a general idea of what you were going for. So because I tend to be more familiar with comics and, you know, the narrative aspect of it, and as much as I'm familiar maybe with some of the characters and doing them as a cover or as a trading card. Trading cards are kind of a world unto themselves. I mean, it's like they're really they're like a cousin to, you know, it's like to comics in a way, or to whatever, you know, or I don't view them necessarily the way a lot of people tend to, which is as an advertising adjunct. You know, in the same way that I see how I view comics. I mean, a lot of times people think of comics as sort of a value-added thing, like kind of like a Happy Meal or a Slurpee cup or something like that.
Right, a precursor to something else. Yeah.
No, it's sort of to me, all of these art forms. I mean, and I do call them art forms that are associated with other, you know, even with sports. Like again, collecting sports cards. I didn't view them necessarily as something that was separate and apart or a plus to the love of baseball. It was actually, they were just cool in and of themselves, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, that's how they are for us pretty much. I mean, you know, I think there is such a component of artists. There is such a moment where artists do these trading cards and there is a story in them. Like, it's not done in panels, but it's done in a look. It's done in the composition. Yeah. It's, you know, we talk about this all the time, especially with other artists. They're like, oh, I really wanted to capture this moment for the character. You know what I mean? So there's this really cool, like, oh, here's a snapshot of this character. Here's a hint on what was happening before. Here's where it might go in the future. You know what I mean? So you're seeing that narrative arc, but you're just capturing the beginning, the end, or the middle. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I love that. By the way, that was wonderful.
The interesting one for me, because we had Simone Bianchi on the show a couple of weeks ago, and when we mentioned you because I know that you were at Lake Como with him a couple of years back.
I saw him there. He was. I think he was taking a nap under his table or something. When he wasn't.
About right.
I love it.
And he told us that he told us a little, because there's a photo I've seen of you and he and a young lady who's a fan of both of you, and she'd posted a photo which we talked about. But one of the interesting things that we've almost more than any other set forensically gone over Simone's work on Marvel Masterpieces 2018, which I think it took him 15 months to do. 135 pieces, and really? One of the cool things about the challenges of doing a Marvel set now is, of course, everything has to be approved, and you know the approvals process, and Upper Deck have made the preliminary art part of the set. So there is a subset that you can get where you can get 90 cards, and it's all the preliminaries where Simone, in various states of the process, some of them are almost like the Magneto is almost fully finished, but some of them are very just black and white, and you know they haven't had that detail added. But and interestingly, Dave Palumbo's process of the preliminaries is completely different. He operates in a very he calls it monochromatic, but it's very much very red and red hues, isn't it, Norrin? The way he's done his.
It's on it's like a red can. It's like he paints it red and then he starts adding black and white variations. It gives variations to the red. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
But they're beautiful. But the interesting thing about them is that with both Simone and Dave Palumbo's work is that you almost get a different sense of the story, or you may not have the full thing that was added, especially with Simone's work, because he creates such an otherworldly kind of environment that the characters are in. I mean, Morbius is on a floating rock.
Yeah, baby.
And, you know,
so cool.
And that's very, very Simone. And you know, some of the stuff that he does with skulls and make Luca where he lives as being part of the background on some of the card art. So I find that very interesting. So when you know how realistic it is that you'd ever spend 15 months doing, you know, one single card set of 135 pieces at this stage in your career, I don't know. But if you were to do it, my whistle is well and truly wetted by the prospect of seeing the preliminary versions of what your final pieces would become. That fascinates me no end, because your style and your finished pieces are so you, but also so different from each other in many ways that I would get the window into that process of creation. It would be fascinating.
You say that. There are more often than not, I tend to find that the preliminaries tend to be much more intriguing to me. You know, the road's not taken sometimes. You know, I think you could talk to any number of artists who work, especially in a commercial capacity. There's that old bromide of you know, I do all these roughs and then, you know, I the worst one. They're always going to pick the worst one, the art director, whatever. You know, so sometimes pieces come back and you end up doing a piece really kind of for yourself. So I tend to like the idea of taking chances with them, but because you're dealing one, not only with the approval process about whether you've nailed the character, the area that gets tense or not tense, that's the wrong word. It gets challenging to nail.
Hey, Norrin.
Hey, Ian.
Happy New Year, buddy.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Folk are probably wondering why they're hearing this.
Yeah, well, your lame-ass internet connection dropped, and we lost about 10 minutes of Bill.
I'm so sorry, buddy. And for folks listening, Bill was asking us about our card community and how the hobby is now.
So we rejoined Bill and us later in that conversation.
So back to Bill Sienkiewicz. I can't believe I just said that.
That's so cool.
It's like the thing about them is they're sort of each of them is unique, but yet they fall under a larger umbrella of uniformity too. It's like they're size or something. I'm talking about the cards now, not about toasters.
I'm for both apply though. So
yeah, but that's very, very cool. So when did you begin it? The groups.
Where are we now? I've lost all track of time and space with 2020. Early 2018, I guess, kind of May 2018. I started the first one, and then Marvel Masterpieces Collectors was a couple of months later. And we've talked about it before on the podcast. But Dave DeVries, who
nice.
Hopefully you'll have heard of him, maybe met on the circuit at some point. But
I've known Dave for a long time. He's phenomenal. He's a great guy and a brilliant, incredible talent. Really, and an absolute sweetheart. Yeah,
super sweet. Love him.
I don't know why I just said that. I just had a brain fart there because obviously he's the one who invited you into Marvel Masterpieces Collectors, and then for that brief 21 minutes. But I thank him for all of it because when Masterpieces Collectors started on day one, he invited Joe Gisco, Julie Boris, Nelson, and all those bigger creators in. And when we started this podcast, he was episode 4, I believe. He was like, it was our first interview, and he was just anything he could do to help us out. So
very supportive,
which was so sweet of him to do. And it's the amazing thing is that there are so many that there's a fair few communities that talk about cards on Facebook and on the internet, and some of them are older than others, but we've got a pretty good community, and we've got a really good healthy mix of artists as well. And what we're finding now is that especially with the sketch cards, because sketch cards are such a big part of the modern sets, and there are so many artists working on them, that we're starting to see that symbiosis of the artists being influenced by and asking for inspiration for the community on Facebook, which is quite a bizarre.
Well, that's but to me that speaks to the connection, between the fans and the creators. It's like of the art or of the comics or the card sets or whatever. It is a dialogue. And that's one of the things that I love. I mean, in terms of becoming a member, it's like I'll have to revisit that. I mean,
you're fine.
I'm only putting your leg.
Really, just I've usually got my head so far up my own butt with working like crazy. So please don't take it as any slight that if I didn't respond. It really just means I'm
not at all. it's social media, and I know it's at the end, for some people,
Ian had to beg me to get on Facebook. It was terrible. Like I'm hardly. I feel bad. Like I'm an admin of the group, the co-host, and I feel terrible. And Ian does most of the work because I can't stand social media. So no, just messing around. I can't do it.
But Facebook's one thing. But what I find interesting, Bill, is how active you are on Twitter. I mean, you're a voracious tweeter, if that's the right word, and just the engagement that you get from that for both your work and obviously for your views on things.
It's been a bit. I mean, I've got a chance to sort of connect with some people that I'd met or am friends with. And it can kind of it can kind of snowball. It can also, I can also meet people that I hadn't met prior. It is a different arena than Facebook. It really is. And although I've been a little bit shy on recently. It's like I had some stuff that I just had to deal with, and it was like I'm just away from being online or whatever. But and of course, doing the memorial pieces that I pop in there with a lot of those or celebratory pieces on occasion.
Yeah,
birthday pieces like for Ed Asner or whomever. But yeah, I tend to love the political arena that you can sort of get in, get out. Again, it doesn't take a lot of time. But in terms of you both, getting in and doing the thing online, does it take up quite a considerable period of time of your daily?
Ian's like nodding his head.
It does for me. It does for me. I mean, no one tunes out quite frequently, but because I kind of set them up and still heavily moderate them, and because people are people and they will occasionally argue, but I would say I probably with the podcast. It's probably 8 to 10 hours a week on the podcast at least. Maybe a bit more actually. And then on the group moderation, probably just checking in and being, it's a fair chunk. But it's not a first world problem situation. I chose to kind of dive in there. So
when it stops being fun, it will stop.
That they are, we get to do these things that we enjoy doing, and so that there is a benefit and a plus to that. There can be as crazy as it can get. That's and I've certainly felt this way about anything I've done in my career. That there's a bumper sticker that says a bad day of fishing is better than a good day at work. I mean, for me, it's like even when I don't feel like I've got any gas in the tank whatsoever, that I'm just fighting with it. To me, it's all still fishing,
I mean, but you see that in your work, though, right? I love that so much. But you see that constantly. Like you're always creative, you're always inventing. Yeah. Like I feel like I've never been bored ever with any of your pieces. You know what I mean? I've never once looked at your pieces and thought, oh, that's just Bill being Bill. That's more like, wow, he's doing something different at this point, and it's just building and building and building. I just love that so much and appreciate you doing that work. I know that's not easy.
Very much. Well, it's interesting when you talk about, being bored or whatever. There was one piece that I decided to do, and I did it as a painting because I thought, does the world really need one more Batman or a gargoyle? And I thought, at a certain point, it's just, the brain just seizes up, and it's, and I just, I'm going to do my version of it, of Batman or a gargoyle, and then I'm going to leave it alone. It's like I'm never going to
Never again. Oh, well, God. But Batman on a gargoyle, man. You can't beat that, though, right? I mean, we can be honest, right? It's just an instant classic.
I don't think I've ever seen a black cat by you, Bill. So if you feel like scratching that itch at any point, then
we're like Silver Surfer, black cat. Like we're whispering all these things. I'm so sorry.
Well, oh, please, that's the thing is that when I ventured with and come into contact with some people on groups or whatever, and they mention they forget that I'm as much of a fan as anyone. So someone will ask me to do some, have you ever drawn this character? I'm like, no, I can't believe I haven't. It's like, let me try that. So you may, and the thing is, the challenge is that so many amazing people have done versions of those, those specific characters. So sometimes the idea of dipping my toe into that water is just like, okay, what can I do to make it, not just mine, but make it feel like the essence of this character. So
see, but that's why you're Bill Sienkiewicz, though, right? It's true.
Well, it's just a level of it's my love for the characters and for the medium, but also probably some level of competitiveness. It's like, this is how there should be, it's like, because I know that certainly when I've had conversations with Alex Ross, I mean, I think he feels that, Captain America is, he's the original version, it's like that's Captain America to him, not the sort of militaristic sort of, or Batman is, it's the spandex. It's not, it's
right.
Not plating,
I don't think he's done a black cat either. I need to have a word.
Ian will have a word with him.
I will have a word, yes. Which reminds me, something you said a moment ago reminds me, I heard the actor Alfred Molina interviewed by Chris Hardwick a few years ago. And at one point in the episode, he was talking about jobs that may not have been going so well, or he might not have been getting along with the director, or it might have been a straight to video, just to pay the bills kind of thing. And he said the one thing that keeps me going is I have to say to myself, it beats hot mopping. And that's kind of his mantra that keeps him going. So, yeah, it kind of like, whatever it is you're doing, it beats hot mopping. You mentioned your, I think you called them memorial pieces. Mm-hmm. And I meant to ask you about this when we were talking about trading card sets. In that I love seeing those. I love being the people who are still living or people who have passed on. So Breonna Taylor is a recent one I remember seeing that you'd done. They would make an amazing trading card collection.
Oh, they're so pretty.
Wow. Well, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, the idea of and this is the kind of gets into an interesting arena for me of value, and I'm going to try to navigate my how I'm discussing this, because I can see a similar issue with trading cards and the perception of them, and also the perception of comics. And what I mean is that the idea of doing a set of trading cards, and I think it would be an interesting idea, because you can actually have, I mean, like I think there was some discussion, amongst myself and maybe some other people, about maybe doing a, school shootings, in terms of like drawing attention to the victims of school shootings, and like that these people, they lived, and then this is what like their interests on the back or whatever, so that they're not forgotten, so that there's a gravitas and an acknowledgement, and then maybe have the funds go to, some kind of social program or some kind of charity or fund. At the same time, it's like the double-edged sword of, because I feel that comics can be, like I did when I worked with Alan Moore on Brought to Light. I feel like the comics can be journalism. Well, they can do something, or when they would do like Heroes for Hope or whatever, or the like stuff for after 9/11, and it benefits. So it's but yet there is a tendency for some people to believe that comics are sort of just medium, still to this day, still a medium for children, and I wonder if the idea of doing it like a trading card set of memorial pieces would be, if there wouldn't be, and I'm sure that there would be probably a maybe a small percentage who feel that it's it's not the arena for it, and yet other people who would feel like it's the perfect arena for it. It's a perfect place because you can carry this with you, and you can, and it's out there, and it's important. There's it's like some kind of thing where you can put it in your pocket if you want to keep that person close to you. So I can't help but this is how my brain works. It's like to see
makes sense.
Positive idea.
No, it is interesting.
And then also
I love that.
Seeing how people, maybe because I've dealt with it since my whole career, and that the idea that some people are going to be the naysayers regardless, even when it's a brilliant idea, like you just said.
Yeah.
I
think there's always a fine line when you bring something to a different medium, right? Like I love the memoriam pieces you're doing because, they're instant, they're posted. It's a nice thing. It's not money. It's like, here's this moment we're going to distill and look at and take a moment to reflect, right? And it becomes this passing thing where it's not like, there's not things that can kind of like bubble out of it and become evil and non-serious and all this kind of stuff. So I understand, right? When you do take different projects to different mediums, right? Like when comic books talk about real world things, right? You always have people who are like, oh, don't touch upon that. This is a fictional world. But then at the same time, you get really touching stories that teach people, right? That move people, that help people learn and become more aware of things, right? So yeah, I totally get that. And that's great to think of it that way. I mean, I wish more people took the time to think about things before they put them out there. You know what I mean? Or went down a certain road, because it is nice to have those moments to say, is this, do I want, is this for here or is this for here?
Well, yeah. Well, I think it simply comes down to like that. I don't necessarily know if it's strictly about trying to think of it in terms of empathy, because there is nor about trying to like head things off at the past. It's like, what's the worst possible way someone could take this like, as someone's going to,
yeah.
Or like it's a little bit like, say, when John Krasinski did like he had this Good News podcast or whatever.
Oh,
and then,
that was brilliant.
Oh yeah.
And then sold it, and so a lot of people sort of felt like when you present something in a certain context, it can be viewed as, hey, we're sharing in this together. Once you monetize it, or you bring another arena, like another aspect into it, it can quickly turn on a dime, and again, there's no solution or there's no end to what I'm saying, and there's no result that I'm trying to get to. I'm just aware of the fact that it just causes a loop of thinking about it to make sure that if it's done as a trading card set or any set or if any set that's being done for anything, that that there's an integrity to it, that at the end of the day.
Well, we just appreciate you doing it, period, I think is the most important thing for sure. It's very cool. It's really awesome. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to quickly, Norrin, you wanted to touch on New Mutants. I haven't seen it yet. Apologies, Bill. I think it was released over here digitally, but I might have missed it.
Yeah, it might. I mean, it just got digitally released. I was able just to watch it a couple of days ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
How fun was that to have the piece become a film? I mean, you must have been. I saw you talk at I saw you virtually at the Comic-Con virtual thing where you were talking about New Mutants, right? With the directors and cast. I think you came on.
Yeah, it was cast. Yeah, and again, they're all. I think Josh is an amazing director. I mean, I can't wait to see what he does with The Stand. I think that's the next thing he's doing.
I saw the trailer for that. Yes.
And the cast has just been wonderful. I mean, it's like I told him, I said, look, as far as I don't have any kids of my own, I said, so, if you get any shit, they're going to have to go through me to get to you. Well,
they were fantastic.
Yeah. But yeah, it was, it got some really good reviews. Other ones were not so great. But I think it was a victim of COVID and of the corporate stuff between Disney and Fox. So I think it sort of became a bit like the bastard stepchild. It sort of got shunted around.
Punching bag type of thing. Yeah. It had a tough road.
I think it was. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really lovely, tight little set piece, and it certainly wasn't a bloated film by any means.
No.
It felt very intimate, and again, for me, it's like getting to know the cast, and now whenever I think of drawings those certain characters, it's like I can't help but think of like Anya as
that's so crazy.
Or when I would do, David Holler, my version with the spiky hair, and it's like I can't help but see, Dan Stevens. So it's
so cool.
They're taking something that Chris and I did and running with it, and then it gets put into another artist, a group of artists and creative craftspeople with their own vision, and then they're running with it, and then I become, a member of the audience who is influenced by what they're doing. So it's a lovely kind of circle that I kind of, really, really do feel that that's kind of the essence of creativity for me, is kind of just keeping it going, paying it forward and keeping it going. So I tend not to be one of those guys who go like, well, that's not how that's supposed to be, like, because who am I to say? I'm just an idiot with a paintbrush. So
I think it's nice though. I think people take interpretation. Look, it was like when we're talking about adaptations and, to start, moving to a close, right? You don't want to see one creation, one medium completely recreated in a new medium. One, you can't do that, right? The transfer is never going to be like that, right? You can't actually get that, right? What I think is so brilliant, and you can just think back to Batman, right? To what Michael Keaton did with Batman, what Christian Bale did with Batman. You know what I mean? Like what George Clooney did with Batman. You know what I mean? Like you have different interpretations and each one brings its own uniqueness. I mean, we're in 2020. How many times have we learned already in the last couple of years that nostalgia, it will bring back anything, right? And it will find its audience and will find its niche, right? I think that's the point. It's entertainment. It was fun. It's nice. You know what I mean? And it was different. And I think that was the cool part.
Very true. And the other aspect of what you're saying that is I remember when the Marvel films first started, their opening logo was the flipping of the comic panels,
That's right.
And then somewhere along the way, it became the flipping of it was the cinema group. The comics were like, they became a fragment of that entire opening. And I not that the only purism I feel like, or purist that I feel like I am, is to not sell art or the original source short, like give it its own due. Like I certainly feel like comics and trading cards are going to be around. They may be in different forms, but they're going to be around, and they're not going to go away, because they speak to that tangibility aspect of things that as human beings we need to hold something in our hand,
Yeah.
But I think that certainly for some corporate, like my view of some of the corporations is that they tend to go where the money is, which of course they're right, and I understand that. But I love the idea that, like, well, don't just concentrate on just the film. Like, think of it, like there are comics or there are trading cards or there's other things there that are, don't cast them aside. It's like
don't neglect the original material, right? And you could see many spectrums of that, right? Like where you have Sin City, where it really took, like Frank Miller really took those comic books and put them, Dick Tracy, like we were talking about, right? I think there's a huge spectrum to how you can do that. Or The Hulk by Ang Lee. Was that it? Yes. Did I nail that? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
The transition of that film are the panels. You know what I mean? It's directly off paneling. Really cool, interesting things, and there's many ways to make tribute to that original content, right? The original material.
Well, I think with anything, it becomes an adaptation is sort of an interpretation. Even when I spoke with Noah Hawley about Legion, it was maybe perhaps in some ways, maybe there might have been a visual correlative to what I was doing, with what I did on that series with Chris. But it was really emotionally consistent in terms of what they went for. They captured the spirit of something. And to me, I love that. And it's like, and to compare or to negatively, go after one medium for its failings, it's like, or how it translates, is a little disingenuous. It's like getting mad at oak because it's not pine. I mean, it needs to be its own content,
100%.
So I mean, as much as the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films are wonderful, it's certainly not going to affect or diminish people's love for Tolkien, or certainly with George Martin, obviously with Game of Thrones, which is the way that from where it began to where it ended up, it's like the desire for his books is probably at an all-time high. So it's the idea that it can all be part of our kind of shared experience, that there's a comic, there's a trading card, there's a movie, there's a series. It's like take it all in.
I love it. Perfect way to.
The biggest labor of I just have one more thing I was going to mention, which is the biggest labor of labor might not be the right word, but the thing that to me that felt it was closest to the source material of recent years was actually both of them, but certainly the Daredevil series recently. For me, whenever I. The reason I think of that is because I saw your post where you'd done a portrait of Vincent D'Onofrio and shared it with him on Twitter recently, and I just looked at that and I thought, well, A, that's a beautiful thing to do. B, the warmth between you is evident, and his portrayal of the Kingpin was just absolutely flawless. But what I love about that series is how, just from the opening credits, I believe David Mack was part of the visuals for the opening credits. Which
I think he the opening credits. I think for Jessica Jones. I mean, he and I were actually
that's it.
We went to the set for Daredevil. And saw Charlie and Deborah, and Vincent, sorry, my computer just unplugged there. Yeah, it was lovely. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was really they did a great job with that series.
It was just beautiful.
So cool.
I just remember watching the opening credits and turning to my wife, who knew nothing about Daredevil. She's not one of us. And saying to her with tears in my eyes, "They've got it right." And this was the first episode, and just the opening credits, and I knew that it was going to be respectful. It was going to carry through with the promise, and it did. It was just brilliant. So I thought it was wonderful. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Bill, you, sir, are a delightful man. We went through this whole episode without talking about Bill's butt challenge, which is a hashtag on Twitter,
damn.
which we have covered on this podcast before. So I will just let people go and look for that hashtag and save you any further embarrassment on
Thank you.
I love it.
Just in time.
Just in time.
It's like want people to put them off their appetites. So
yeah, I think
Nah.
that'll be fine. That'll be fine. Thank you, Bill. Listen. I'm sure you hear this all the time. We're huge fans of your work. We love what you do in and out of the comic and trading card medium. Now our listeners are really going to enjoy just hearing you talk about your work. So thank you for spending some time with us.
Really, really wonderful, and thank you so much for your patience in terms of getting letting me take my own sweet Punxsutawney Phil time, getting out of my groundhog hole. But I'll certainly be looking into your groups and perhaps stopping by and saying hi, because this has also been just really wonderful for me in terms of just the connection with a group of like-minded individuals. It really it's more than ever. I feel like we certainly need that. So it's been an absolute delight, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill.
So
You're
Bill,
fantastic.
You remember how we end our episodes? Do you think you could remember to say those magic words?
Well, something I think that I certainly sort of it's a credo that I live by, which even on the toughest times, it's like where it becomes an obsession. I enjoy collecting.
Thanks for listening to the Marvel Card Collectors podcast. Visuals and tasting notes for each episode can be found on our Facebook page. You can subscribe and leave us a voicemail via our home on anchor.fm/MCCP. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Please take a second to subscribe, like, and review our show wherever you get your podcasts. Our podcast can be found by Googling @the MCC Pod, which will also find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Our Facebook community is at MCCW, Marvel Card Collectors Worldwide, and MMC, Marvel Masterpieces Collectors. The great music we use is called Rocket Power by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks to the collectors, artists, and creators who support the Marvel Cards Fan Collective. We'll see you next time, and remember, it's a small hobby but a fun one. Make mine Marvel and enjoy collecting.